and has 2 children.
And before we begin with the questions, we wanted to lay out the ground rules of the debate that have been agreed to by both candidates. So there are no opening statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question.
And there will be a 30-second rebuttal as determined by the moderators. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks, and we are following COVID-19 safety protocols by social distancing. There is no audience here in the studio. We held a drawing, and the first question goes to Daniella Levine Cava.
So let's get started. And the first question, of course, surrounds COVID, the response and the recovery. No doubt there is an economic crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID has affected not only the health of our citizens, but also the economic health of our citizens as well. Many businesses, as you know, are struggling. Other businesses have closed altogether. If you become mayor, how will you bring jobs and increase economic opportunities for all citizens in the county during this recovery process?
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you, Joanne. Happy to be with you and with the audience. We must take care of our health while we're rebuilding our economy. So it is a false dichotomy to say it's one or the other. So I'll be bringing a chief medical officer to my office who will guide the opening of our economy with the facts, with the data. And this is so important because we know that earlier we opened too soon when we did not have the public health structure in place that we needed. Now, fortunately, things seem to be on the down side, and let's hope it continues the same. And my heart goes out to the president and his wife and the many others who've been affected, like hundreds of thousands of others in this country struggling. So we must double down on the economic recovery. We can continue to support our small businesses as they do everything they must to protect themselves and the public, the masking, the disinfection. We've been providing funds through the CARES Act to help them on the road to recovery. We're going to need to bring in infrastructure dollars from the federal and state government and also local. These are great jobs, and they are pandemic proof because we can support people here with skilled labor. We also need to bring private sector capital along with the public sector dollars so that we can have access for our small businesses during these difficult times of recovery.
Commissioner Bovo, how will you bring jobs and increase economic opportunities for all citizens in the county?
Yeah, and thank you, Jackie and Joanne, for participating, and NBC for offering this forum. No doubt that the COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on our economy and also on our health. And my prayers go out to the President and the First Lady and all those that have been affected. I personally know people that have been infected by the virus and also have passed away, and there's no recovery of that human life. As we navigate the next mayor, and when I am your next mayor, we're going to work to recover our economy and do it in conjunction with the businesses that have most been affected. Those small businesses, those mom and pop operations that in many cases will never open their door again because of what government has done. We are basically living a moment in Miami-Dade County that's never been seen before, where the local government has literally reached in to the private sector and has killed economic opportunity and jobs. That has led to a couple of issues that we need to address and can't ignore. Number one, we need to diversify our economy. As mayor, I'll be working with the mayors of all the cities in Miami-Dade County to come up with a comprehensive plan that is united. Folks in Homestead need the same information as those in Aventura and Hialeah. It can't be a diverse message. I would also work in a way that we would do more testing, give those opportunities in businesses to dictate terms to us, and help our tourism industry, which has been ravaged by this virus, and we need to get that tourism industry back quicker than having to wait later.
All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stick with COVID because it is a hot topic. And Commissioner Bovo, let's start with you on this question. South Florida has been the epicenter, as you know. The numbers are staggering when it comes to COVID-19. We now sit at more than 171,000 cases and more than 3,300 related deaths. So how do you believe Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez handled the pandemic, and what would you have done differently?
Well, look, I think it's important and disingenuous for one to start second guessing. We went based on the information given at that time. The mayor's directives were there, but if we allow ourselves, I would have worked with the cities to give better communication. There was a lot of confusion in our community. You know, folks in Hialeah weren't getting the same information that those in Palmetto Bay, and we need to work and be united on one page. I think we also made a mistake of not enforcing more masks early on. You know, and again, the data was kind of jumbled. The CDC said one thing and then they countermanded each other. I think the way we move forward is, number one, better communication with our cities, have one general plan that we all agree to, work with our businesses in our community in a way that they could develop a plan and then government could validate and enforce the plan that they're putting together. They know better how to create a space to take care of their employees as well as their customers, and government doing it sometimes fails. And as I was saying earlier, we need to work with the tourism industry. I represent people that for 7 months have not worked. We need to help that tourism industry come back. And as county mayor, we're going to have to come up with a plan that promotes that Miami-Dade County is open for business in a safe way.
All right, Commissioner Levine, Cava, that same question goes to you. How do you believe Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez handled the pandemic, and what would you have done differently?
Yes. I was very frustrated, Jawan, because we had information from March from the White House, from the CDC, what we needed to do. And we were not meeting for a time there as a commission, and the mayor was making all the decisions, and things were moving very slowly until we had the mask up, and there was confusion. Cities had different rules from the county, different curfew hours. And then finally, without the adequate testing, tracing, and isolation that was recommended clearly by the CDC, we opened up too soon and we had to shut back down when the cases shot up. So I will be making sure that as mayor, we will guide our decisions with medical expertise. I'll have a chief medical officer, and we'll work with our business community. Look, our businesses did everything they were asked to do. They put into place new protocols, they distanced, they went outside, they went online, they disinfected, and, you know, hats off to them because, of course, they are the backbone of our economy, these small businesses and our tourism industry. But we have to do our part in government. We have to have adequate public health measures in place. We did not. Coming back, we need to rebrand. We're ready. We're open for business. Fortunately, now the cases are down. Hopefully that will continue this way, and we'll be able to bring back local visitors, visitors from out of town. People are still coming. We're still a favorite destination, and hopefully we'll work together to get forward.
Commissioner Bovo, would you like a rebuttal?
Well, look, I think in general we agree. One of the differences perhaps in our styles that she had asked for a 25% opening of businesses as opposed to 50%, and I think that showed a disengagement in what the small business person goes through. You know, that mom and pop operation many times goes without drawing a paycheck in order to pay creditors and contractors, and I think what's important is to get into that small business operator and see how we could help them get up and running quicker.
Okay, we're going to move on to transportation because obviously that is a major issue affecting every citizen in the county. And with a history of broken promises dating back to the half-penny sales tax, there are a lot of areas that need help across the county. What are your priorities to improve transit options in the county and help alleviate congestion, which we are all living in right now? And also, are you in favor of a monorail system to connect Miami to Miami Beach? Commissioner Cava.
Yes, well, we have 6 corridors that have been prioritized, and we are making progress, though not as fast as we need to. And let's say we have to build these corridors in a way that will make them good for the commuter. We cannot put a price tag that makes it good for tourists, maybe, but not for our everyday citizens. So some of the corridors, we don't know what the cost will be for the average commuter, and we need to be sure that we are truly meeting the needs of the public. South Dade, I voted for train. That was what was promised. That's what the mayor said he would deliver. He changed course at the last minute. We could have started that train incrementally halfway down. That was rejected outright, and so the people are disappointed. We'll get something better than what we have now, and we'll have to rebuild to the train in the future. North is getting a train. As far as the Miami Beach connection, that's 30 years in the making, and the studies have come back that it should be either a monorail or an extension of the mover system. And you know, we're waiting for the final numbers to come in, exactly how we go. But right now, we've got one company that came in with a price tag way too high. We also have to focus on buses. So we have a Better Bus project with solutions that will make buses more reliable, more frequent, and for the transit dependent, that's a critical lifeline.
Commissioner Bovo?
Jackie, we have some differences here in the issue of transportation. Globally, we want people to move and move in an efficient way, but these projects are expensive. I think the viewer needs to understand that every mile of Metro Rail is $100 to $120 million per mile of construction. That doesn't include maintenance and operation. So we need to be transparent with folks, talk to them in an honest way, where in order for us to move the dial on transportation, it's going to require public-private partnerships at times and federal help. You know, in the South Corridor, a lot of promises were made, but not by me. I try to act as a realist on this issue so that we could bring a bus system that is uninterrupted, works like a rail system, and sets the foundation for a future rail system. Now, what that did was also bring in $100 million of federal funds. So between the state, the federal government, and the local government, we're going to be able to pay for stations with platform boarding and stations that will bring development all along. Now, other promises have been made by others that have been almost impossible to keep. But we do need transit to our stadium. We do need transit to the northeast and to the west. And obviously this Genting project is an interesting project that we as a board members have to analyze. If it makes sense for the residents of Miami-Dade County, then obviously we should at least understand what it does and then decide yay or nay. Also taking into account that we've had this conversation for 30 years in Miami-Dade County. It's time to move forward.
So in terms of connectivity between Miami and Miami Beach, are you in favor of that?
Well, absolutely. I think I was in grade school when they started talking about this, and that was a long time ago.
Commissioner Levine Cava, I'd like you to rebut, because he says there are some differences in opinion on the transportation system and mass transit in Miami-Dade.
Well, I am solidly, Jackie, on the side of transit. We cannot build highways to solve this problem. We have to get people out of their cars, and the only way to do that is that they have a really good choice. For example, I ride the Metro Rail to go downtown because I see the people sitting in traffic on US 1 right next to me, so that makes me a choice rider. On top of that, we have so many that are dependent upon it every single day. We can't leave them behind, which is what we've done for decades. I had to fight to get new buses in. They were 15 years old, and my colleagues fought me on that. So I am squarely on the side of transit riders.
Okay, Commissioner Bovo, let's stick with transportation because it is a hot topic. As you said, it's been a hot topic for years now. And I got a lot of messages on social media here recently from residents concerned about transportation resources for the elderly and the disabled people in Miami-Dade County. So how can the county help the elderly and disabled get around more efficiently?
Jawan, we created a county, not by our doing, that has grown east and west without any kind of transportation grid whatsoever. Many people in our community are condemned to having to use their car. It's just the way we developed for a long time. Now, the good thing is that there are opportunities. I've worked exclusively in these areas, not only to create more funding, but also to make sure that those that need transit could take it and take it to where they want to go, because that's a fundamental key. You know, we have right now the Golden Passport that allows most of our residents that qualify, and I would think almost all do, and veterans, to be able to use our transit for free. And that's fundamentally important for those folks that need the system to be able to move around. And obviously, we take all the necessary precautions that handicapped folks could have, access to our system. I think that's our obligation. It falls into the realm of what I believe is the role of county government. You know, we've got certain bullseye issues that we have to take care of. You know, police, fire, water, sewer. Transportation is one of those. We need to be able to afford transportation and do it for generations to come. You know, I may be condemned to my car, although I do use Metro Rail quite a bit, especially when I'm going to the county. But I understand full well that there's a generation that is going to need another mode of transportation. And also take into consideration, we lose on a chance for something like Amazon because we did not solve this issue of transportation long ago.
All right, Commissioner Levine Cava, your thoughts on how the county can help the elderly and disabled get around more efficiently?
Yes, thanks, Jawan. So we actually have some real problems when it comes to accessibility. For example, the elevators and the escalators are often broken in the Metro Rail system for long periods of time. And because I'm a transit user, people are often messaging me, and I'm trying to find out what's the delay. Turns out we don't have enough people to fix those things. And I am in favor of having our own apprenticeship class just to keep those kinds of skilled workers available so that our riders that need access are not left behind. We've also privatized part of our routes, and some of the buses don't have the lifts that are needed, and also people are left on the roadside. And what about those bus benches sitting in the sun, sitting in the rain? We have so few of them that are covered and provide dignity to our riders, not just seniors but and disabled, but everybody. So I've been pushing really hard to change that contract so we can bring more dignity to the rider. Look, safety is another issue. We had the very unfortunate incidents in the Metro Mover with attacks, and we have, as soon as I was told about it, I contacted our director, and he got right on it, and we put police in those trains and on those stations, working with the cities, which we have to do, and as a collaborator in chief, that's what I'll do.
All right, moving on to our next question now. Commissioner Levine, Cava, this is for you. After the death of George Floyd, we saw protests across the country, including right here in South Florida. People protesting racial injustice and systemic racism. Do you believe we have systemic racism issue here in Miami-Dade County? And what does Black Lives Matter mean to you?
Yes, thanks so much. I do believe that we have racism throughout our society. In every aspect. And by the way, my opponent said he didn't see systemic racism in Miami-Dade County. I've spent a lifetime working on issues of equality and opportunity, so I know that racism does exist and does persist, and it will be a priority for me. You know, the movement grew with diverse support across the aisle. Mitt Romney walking in marches, former President Obama marching, police officers around the country and mayors and others, faith leaders, community leaders. So peaceful demonstration is an incredibly important part of our Constitution, of our rights as citizens, and so many have come to this country to enjoy those freedoms and those rights. So to me, what this means is we must all work harder for every part of our society to have a shot at the American dream, and that we leave nobody behind and we do not allow our prejudice and our racism to get in the way.
And what does Black Lives Matter mean to you?
Specifically that we have people that have felt and have experienced the disproportionate impact of prejudice and racism, and we cannot tolerate it as a society, and we have to work together to address it across the board.
All right. Commissioner Bovo, let's move on to you then. Same question. Do you believe we have a systemic racism issue in Miami-Dade County, and what does Black Lives Matter mean to you?
So the question that was posed to me at another forum that she's referencing to was if I thought county government practiced systemic racism. I've never seen any evidence of it. But obviously, if it happens, it needs to be called out. As mayor, I won't tolerate it, plain and simple. Now, on the issue of Black Lives Matter, absolutely. The life of black people matter in our community. I believe in the sanctity of life. There's no question about that. You know, as the only Hispanic in the race, I recall a time going with my dad someplace and somebody disrespecting him and basically discriminating against him because he couldn't speak the language and he was Cuban. So I understand that, but this is something that society needs to fix. Your county government does everything it can to make sure that we're inclusive. You know, we're a very, very diverse community, but we're not a divided community. And as mayor, I'm going to strive to make sure that everybody has access to its government. I think that's the obligation that we have. Now, you know, when we start talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, what we are seeing, unfortunately, is that the opportunity to talk about race in our community started to get erased by a group of individuals that were not interested in racial harmony or conversation. What they're interested in is in anarchy. What we're seeing in Portland and New York and in Chicago is not any kind of peaceful demonstrations. What we're seeing is destruction, and in many places, costing people's lives.
All right. Would you like to have a rebuttal?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, I would. You know, our police have done a fantastic job of protecting the rights of protesters, and we've been very fortunate to have had minimal disruption as compared to some other places, and peaceful protests is what we all believe in. I had the incredible good fortune just yesterday to visit with our training bureau and to learn in more detail about the groundbreaking work we're doing right here in Miami-Dade County, unique in the country, to train our officers in a way that they will be able to respond to de-escalate more appropriately violence in certain situations that could be trigger type situations. So I feel very, very hopeful that we're going to continue in the right direction. We have systemic racism in county government.
We're going to have to interrupt you at that moment. The time is up for the rebuttal. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bovo, the next question is to you. The largest portion of county spending goes toward police departments and jails. You both approved the budget that includes an increase to the county's police budget by 1%. And at a time when there is a call to action by some to defund the police, would you support lowering the policing budget in any form in favor of shifting resources to other programs? Commissioner.
Jackie, the South Florida FOP and the South Florida PBA have endorsed my campaign because precisely have stood fastly that we're not going to defund the police once I'm elected mayor. In contrast, my opponent has voted on 3 separate occasions. Government documents indicated, memorandums indicated that $7.5 million was going to be removed from the county's police budget in order to fund a civilian panel. She voted in favor of it on 3 separate occasions. The documents exist. This is not something that I'm just making simply up. You know, police is the fundamental purpose we engage government. We have created our county government for quality of life issues. We've created county government so that we have safe streets that bring economic opportunity in investment. Show me a neighborhood that is lawless and has crime, and I'll show you a neighborhood where there's no economic opportunity. That's why supporting our police is extremely important. That's why the PBA has taken such a strong position in favor of my campaign, to the point that when my opponent was campaigning and demonstrating against the police department, they had to issue a letter to her asking her to apologize, of which to this date she has not apologized to the police of our community. You know, it's outrageous. And I will tell you, I had a conversation with a police officer recently who was during the demonstrations where they were burning cars. He took a rock to the head off of I-95. Thank God he had the proper equipment, because if not, he'd be dead today.
Commissioner Levine Cava, would you support lowering the policing budget in any way to shift funds to another program?
Jackie, I've been very clear. I have voted for increases in the police budget every year. I've solidly said I would not reduce the police budget. Public safety is #1. In fact, I lobbied for more police, 80 additional in South Dade, a new police district station, more community policing, more specialized units. Look, I voted with the police, and that, you know, they supported me in my 2014 election and my 2018 election because I've stood solidly with the working men and women in our county. In fact, my opponent in 2014 and before voted to reduce positions in the police department. As well, he voted to force the police officers to spend more of their money on their health benefits. Those were the times in which unions came forward, including the police, and backed me strongly to be the county commissioner. I was not demonstrating against the police. That's another falsehood. I was demonstrating on behalf of the communities that want to feel that they can work together with the police, and the police were there supporting me, walking on those occasions. So I solidly stand with the police. They do not want an independent civilian panel. That money was not going to come and did not come from the police budget. I never would have and did not support taking it from the police budget.
So you never voted in favor of defunding the police?
No, ma'am.
And what about the documents?
Look, there was a memo that came from the administration saying what it might cost to fund an ICP. That memo was not to approve taking that money out of the police budget. I never voted to take that money out of the police budget.
Commissioner Bovo.
The memo did not say what it might cost. The memo said what it would cost. And we're in 2020, and the police unions in our community, both South Florida PBA and FOP, are supporting my candidacy, not here, because basically on this issue of defunding police. This is a fundamental issue in this campaign, and it should not be glossed over. If we're going to have lawlessness a la New York and Chicago and Portland, you have an alternative in this campaign. It's not me, because I'm standing firm with the police department.
Commissioner Levine Cava.
These are scare tactics. This is reading out of somebody's playbook. I am solidly supporting the police department and the innovation and the good work that they're doing, world class. Not only that, when I met with them yesterday and visited to learn more about their training programs, which are innovative and world class, I suggested that we become a training center for the nation on how to work with our police to respond in times of crisis.
All right, Commissioner Levine Cava, this question is to you first. There was a lot of debate and push after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis for Miami-Dade County to have an investigative review panel to look into cases of police brutality and excessive force. Now, it eventually passed. Eventually it did. So if elected, how would you work with the panel and the Miami-Dade Police Department to uphold its mission?
I'm a supporter of the independent civilian panel. In fact, it was on the books since the times of the McDuffie riots. It was defunded during the recession, and it's come back in a modified form after the veto and compromises were made. But at the end of the day, this is a way to restore the community's trust with police. It's an independent opportunity to look at cases where people are concerned about the behavior, and I am sure that just like I have been so impressed with how the police are analyzing these cases, making sure that they learn and that police officers are trained, that this body will also be impressed. But whenever we have government has to be accountable. Whenever we have authority, we have to have opportunities for the public to be heard. Simply, plain and simple, just like they did in the city of Miami and other places all around the country, we will do it Miami style, and it will help to build the trust. And just like police were very nervous about police cameras, now they see that the cameras really help to tell the full story, and I'm sure that this also, soon will come to everyone to see that this is a benefit to the community and to police.
Commissioner Bovo, the question to you, how would you work with the panel and the Miami-Dade Police Department to uphold its mission?
Before I answer that, I also want to be clear on something. The $7.5 million that she would have voted to defund, she wouldn't have been standing at a training center, because these are the same dollars we need to improve our police department. The IRP was created on the aftermath of something that happened in Chicago. Not in Miami-Dade County, in Chicago. And many radical elements wanted to impose in Miami a fix that they may have needed in Chicago. We've had an IRP before, and it was not defunded. We didn't have the funds, basically, because we had to respond to the taxpayer at that critical time when we had an economic collapse. But since that moment, without an IRP, what we've had is more officers suspended and dismissed than before. In other words, the system that we had put in place with better training, more sophisticated involvement of our police department, a very diverse police department that is reflective of our community, was working. However, we now have the IRP, and as your mayor, I'm going to make sure it works. I will support their efforts and their work and collaborate with them so that they get the right information, because what we don't want is an IRP that turns into a basic witch hunt against officers, because anytime you create a government program, they're going to need to justify their existence. And what we don't want is to create more division in our community.
Commissioner Cava.
My opponent brought an item to that would not allow the results of an ICP or IRP to be considered in a police officer's record. This is disingenuous. Either we have a body that can function the way it should and is mandated to perform, that does independent reviews, that has opportunities to hear from all sides. Either we take that evidence as credible or we dismiss it, and that is what he will do.
Okay, let's move on now. Miami-Dade, as you both know, is in dire need of affordable housing, and the cost of housing has far outstripped wages. The crisis has seemed to spread up the income scale over the last few years. So what plan do you have in place to make housing more accessible to those who need it, and would you be willing to use some of the county land to build? Commissioner Bovo.
Jackie, I've been working on this issue now for a while with the departments in the county. Absolutely, you need to use vacant county land, and we have a lot of that land, in order to make it available to those developers, and then collaborate with those developers so that we could build the proper housing that we need. And we have tools that we could do it, not only with red tape, we could do it with the utilities, getting properties ready by bringing some of the utilities to the property line. We can also work with them by giving them some more density, where then we could extract some units units for the purpose of their workforce housing and low income. This is a space that's very important. Now, I will also remind you that in many, many instances, what's happened in our county is that these no-build moratoriums lead us to the situation we're at. This is supply and demand. If you do not have enough supply of housing in our community, what ends up happening is the demand is there, the cost goes up. It's why we've had many in our community turn their garages into efficiencies, charging $1,500, $1,700, $1,800 a month. That is not a sustainable housing plan. As your mayor, we're going to work to make these lands available.
Commissioner Levine Cava, what plan do you have in place to make housing more affordable to the citizens of Miami-Dade County?
Absolutely. We have one of the most expensive housing markets with some of the lower salaries, so we have a huge gap between the cost of living and salaries. So we must do more. I've considered this a crisis for many years. I worked prior to coming on the commission to create a Housing Within Reach task force. I served on a county board looking at these issues, and there are many important ideas. It has not been declared a crisis, and it truly is hurting our businesses as well because it's hard to house our workforce. So we have a substantial amount of county property that we're moving too slowly to production. We also are looking now at new opportunities as we've consolidated our office spaces with more people working remotely. I'll put all of that into production. We also need to cut the permitting time to get these projects moving forward. There's a lot of red tape. It's not moving the way it should. And as an example, yesterday I cut the ribbon on a wonderful project, 204 units in my district, that uses form building. They were able to keep the price low to those who are moderate income, low and moderate income, and put that into occupancy within a year. Now that is the kind of thing we need to replicate. We also need to preserve our existing affordable housing. We need to make sure to renovate, to harden for hurricanes and storms and flooding homes that are currently affordable and might expire, and we need to produce up to 10,000 new units per year to meet the demand. I have changed the laws for the community redevelopment agencies on gentrification to make sure that we build housing.
All right, moving on now. Commissioner Cava, this question is for you. King tides, oh man, they continue to be a major problem for parts of Miami-Dade County and seem to only get worse, and with the rising sea levels. A recent fish kill in Biscayne Bay highlighted some of those other environmental issues that can also have a negative impact on our tourism and real estate business sectors out there. So what's your plan to tackle climate change and its effects?
Yes, thank you so much. So I am known as the water warrior. Since I came on the commission, I've been fighting for the protection of our fresh water, our beaches, our drinking water. Without clean water, we cannot exist here, and certainly it would kill our economy. So let's just use the Bay as an example. 3 years ago, it was brought to my attention that we had an alarming die-off of the seagrass, which is the incubator for our fishing industry and really our entire ecosystem here. And I brought it to the county's attention. We have not moved rapidly. We have pending reports that I've requested. On my watch, we will move forward aggressively on all of the fixes to the death of the Bay, the potential death of the Bay. We have the septic to sewer conversion that fortunately I've been pushing our water and sewer department that they can help residents that are in the most vulnerable places to connect to the water and sewer system. Our water and sewer pipes that are bursting, I've been the most insistent to move forward rapidly on those repairs. And I have a fertilizer ordinance coming just next week that will help us to prevent the fertilizer that's contributing to the nutrients in the Bay.
Okay, Commissioner Bovo, question to you. What's your plan to tackle climate change and its effects?
Yeah, I think the only person that calls herself the water warrior is her. But look, it's a $3 billion cost in order for us to be able to address the issues of septic tank that is affecting our bay. And water is an asset for us. Not only is it on the ocean side, job creation, tourism that comes for our beaches, but the bay. You know, the development all along our bay is treasure for a lot of the mayors and the cities all along the bay. You know, I'll work with mayors. I'll work with Mayor Suarez and other mayors and stakeholders to figure out ways and work with the state, with the federal government on how we could take care of this septic tank issue. We need to get folks on sewer. They got to get off septic tank. Many of these septic tanks haven't even been updated, haven't been checked, inspected. You know, we've got stuff going right into our groundwater that can be a problem and has become a problem. You know, I filed a resolution declaring the emergency on the bay, working now with the governor's office, and soon we will have him here in South Florida to start touring the bay and making sure those state dollars, because we can't do it by ourselves. And the connectivity to our water and sewer lines is going to be very creative. We're going to need to come up with ways to do it. Not only can the state help us with bringing lines to the property, but maybe the Y-Green program may be able to help us to connect to those water lines, because it is very expensive. We've heard cases of some that have to pay $30,000 to $40,000 just to connect to water and sewer line. Many of us in our community can't afford it, reminding this is something that addresses their property values.
All right. Commissioner.
Yes, he's a Johnny-come-lately to the environmental issues here. I've been endorsed by every environmental group that endorses. The emergency that was declared in the Bay was long after there was an emergency, and that was the first time he passed any legislation, environmentally speaking, here in the county. Look, he voted for offshore drilling in the state legislature. I'm sorry, but my opponent is not a friend of the environment.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on that because you both mentioned the septic tank situation right now in Miami-Dade County. So the county obviously needs to improve its sewage infrastructure, including its leaking septic tanks. How would you address the problem, Commissioner Bovo?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Jackie, one of the things that we need to do is get connectivity to the lines. One of the issues that we have is that in order to get a water sewer line to properties or a general area that has septic tanks, it's extremely expensive. And to assume that the property owner could do it is prohibitive. I've had cases, 40, 50, 60, sometimes even higher amounts of money in order to get the lines. Now, what I think we could do, and I would propose to do, is what I said we were doing earlier, working with the state and the federal government, coming up with the mechanisms in order to do that connectivity that is sorely needed, and then help the property connect to the line. So if we could assume the cost with federal or state help to get the lines close to the property, then the property owner could use Y-Green programs in order to connect. And I think the county has a responsibility to help those residents also to maybe map out the cost of that over a period of time so that it's not one hit right off the bat. But this is important. It addresses people's property values. It addresses folks directly in their home. And I think as mayor, you know, not only can you lead the charge on these issues, we need to lead the charge on these issues. You know, this is not about being Johnny-come-lately or anything like that. This has to be addressed, and has to be addressed in a way exactly for what people engage county government, is to protect their investment. Their home is their biggest investment. As mayor, I'm going to ensure we're going to work on that investment and protect it.
Commissioner Levine, Cava, you talked about the septic to sewer conversion. So what would you do to address this problem?
Well, I asked for a report. The report is delayed, but I've been briefed on it. I know that we have 300 homes that are the most vulnerable, and I'm going to be moving forward as mayor immediately to address those 300. Fortunately, under pressure from me, really, we have the Water and Sewer Department acknowledging finally that they can use some of the fees that they have to future homeowners, which they've, until now, they've been very reluctant to do. Look, my opponent voted for the American Dream Mall project, which includes a huge main line going out at a tremendous cost, using those dollars that really need to be used right now for that septic to sewer conversion. The Keys did it, Monroe did it. They set a very good example. We need to work with our state government, our federal government, to bring the extra dollars to do those main lines. And yes, we need to use our current fee dollars to do those laterals to bring to the homes.
Commissioner Bovo, your response to the American
Well, it shows a clear disconnect. You know, she mentions a mall. First of all, we don't build malls in Miami-Dade County. Private ventures do that. By the way, one that would create upwards of 40,000 jobs in our community, permanent and temporary jobs. You know, and in this post-COVID moment, we're going to need to work with everyone to put people back to work, and as quickly as possible. The money being generated out of that area is what pays for the utilities in that area, not take it from some other place. So let's be genuine when we talk about this issue. In order to address the septic tank issue, we're going to need, this is maybe a $3 billion operation, and we need to be transparent and honest with the folks of Miami-Dade County.
All right, Commissioner Cava, we're going to switch topics. We're going to talk about gun violence. Gun violence continues to be a major issue in Miami-Dade County, and I've spoken to mothers out there who work extremely hard in our community, mothers like Tangela Sears and Romania Dukes, who work extremely hard with mothers who have lost loved ones out there due to gun violence. What's your plan to combat gun violence across the county?
You know, such a devastating issue, and so many lives needlessly lost, especially our young people. Both Tangela and Romania, who are themselves the victims, support me in my campaign because they know I've been out on the front lines with them on this issue. Let me say, I brought legislation to challenge the state legislature by lawsuit about their preemption of our ability to pass local laws. That was very important, and so far we've been successful. I brought attention to the fact that our police department was not enforcing the background checks at, for example, gun shows, and now they are. That's an important area where guns are getting out. We need to do a gun trace study to understand how are all these guns getting into the community. It's a travesty and obviously hurting everyone. So I think what's most important here is responsible gun owners should have their guns, but we need to get a handle on how we make sure that appropriate background checks are completed and that guns do not get into the wrong people's hands.
Commissioner Bovo, what's your plan to combat gun violence across the county?
It's been disheartening to see what has happened in many of our communities, particularly in Miami-Dade County, of this gun violence. And sadly, it seems like there are children in our community that can't be afforded just the opportunity to play in front of their house, which is something that is outrageous in this day and age. You know, we have a collaborative program, the Blue and Brown program, where the City of Miami and the Miami-Dade Police Department collaborate to police areas. This is why this conversation of defunding police is so serious. You know, we need to invest more. These individuals that live in these communities are asking for more police, more involvement. We have shot spotter programs going on in the city and the county that could pinpoint literally where a gunshot comes from. And, you know, we need to work with stakeholders in the community to take ownership of their neighborhoods so that we could collaborate in a way to identify those that pulled the trigger. You know, sadly, Jawan, in many instances, the people in the community know exactly who's pulled the trigger. They know it. What they have been frustrated is with the lack of prosecution from the state attorney's office, and they've been frustrated with people not coming forward to cooperate. You know, and they won't do that until they feel that they could be safe in their communities. We need to provide that. Defunding the police will never do that.
Commissioner Cava?
Again, as a social worker who spent my lifetime, actually went to graduate school with the exact idea of helping children to do better and have more opportunities, I know prevention is the key. That to be said, unlike my opponent, I don't blame single mothers for the violence on the street, and he has done exactly that on the dais.
Wait, hold on. You know, this is the stuff that come out of here outrageous. I don't know what she's talking about is blaming single mothers, okay? My sister's a single mother, so be careful when you start throwing out accusations for political purposes, okay? The issues in our community are serious. The issues in our community need to be addressed. Now, you could be fancy with any term you want to, but the folks in our community, what they need is help. And as mayor, we're going to make this a priority. We're going to work together to make sure that our streets are safe.
Commissioner Cava, he says that you threw out a political accusation there.
It's on the record. We're not able to show it to you here today, but I'll be happy to provide it.
Okay, let's move from that because Commissioner Bovo, you said that kids aren't safe to play in front of their homes anymore. So school safety has always been an important issue, not only for students, but for parents as well. When we send our kids to school, we expect them to be in a sheltered and safe environment. And after MSD, this issue has come to the forefront on a national stage. So what plan do you have in place to keep our kids safe in school, Commissioner Bovo?
Well, we already have a very robust plan where we're including police officers in our schools. It's sad to see it happen, to be perfectly honest with you, because for a long time that wasn't the narrative. But because of what's going on in our community, we're forced to do it. And I support that effort. I support it in my kids' school. I support it in everybody's school. We should insist to make sure that we have a police presence there. You know, it's sad to think that part of the curriculum may have to be for many of our children to have to hide under a desk or run into a closet. You know, it sounds to me like something of the 50s, you know, when we're talking about a nuclear disaster. You know, but we also need to work on mental health issues. You know, why is it that somebody that clearly should not have a gun in their hands is getting a gun in their hand? You know, where did the system fail? And I think we need to insist as mayor, collaborate with all the stakeholders to make sure that that person that cannot have a gun because of a history of violence does not get a gun. You know, I'll work with all the stakeholders on this issue because I think it's fundamentally important. You know, I cannot fathom for the life of me, sending your child to school and praying and hoping that nothing happens to him other than, you know, a scraped knee. And that's something that I think our society in general has failed the next generation if we don't get this thing accomplished and do it right.
Commissioner Cava, how would you keep our kids safe in the schools
Yes,
in Miami-Dade?
so Jackie, I view these things in totality. I believe that schools are a part of a larger community effort to keep our children safe. I've had the opportunity to meet with the superintendent and talk to him about ways that the county and the school board can work more closely together to help our children all along the way, getting ready for first-time school, after-school activities, internships, apprenticeships. You know, we don't fund those things through our county budget. It's a separate budget, but we have an opportunity to work collaboratively. We talked about having the Early Learning Coalition, the United Way, Children's Trust, School Board, and others coming together for a unified plan for our children. Right now, we're spending from different pots of money without a clear unified plan how to protect our children and help them grow healthy and strong and productive. So again, that's what I've done my whole life. That's what I'll do as mayor. I'll bring people to the table. We'll have a plan. We'll make sure that our dollars are spent in the most effective way to keep our children safe and to keep them away from those sorts of activities.
No doubt about it. We are suffering through an economic crisis here due to COVID-19. Many people have lost their jobs. We said many businesses have closed, and as a result, the homeless population has increased, especially in downtown Miami. What plan do you have in place to help that specific population in order to get housing and to get food?
Yeah, so I have a lot of experience also working with the homeless. When I was in graduate school, I actually wrote a curriculum for how to work with the homeless in New York City. Of course, New York City has a very extensive program. We have a very good program here, nationally recognized through our Homeless Trust, but it's a housing first philosophy, but we don't have the housing. So especially now that so many are going to sadly face eviction or mortgage foreclosure, we're going to have an increase in people that are going to need services. Part of that are the severely emotionally ill or those who are drug users, and they obviously need treatment, but we have to get them safely housed before we can really tackle those things. That's what the law says, and we need more housing to be able to do that. You know, we had a very unfortunate incident on the mover where some people were attacked, and we can't allow that to go forward, so we have to increase security at the same time as we're providing the necessary resources to house those who are really suffering from our society.
Commissioner Bovo.
You know, Jackie, all these are very touching issues and very important issues, and thank God for all those social workers. But as mayor of the county, you're entrusted on taking the dollars that the taxpayer spends and sends for services. And I feel that we stretch our county government into areas that we're ill-equipped to fix. You know, perhaps the state or the federal government should be engaged more actively in these areas. But understand, when people complain, and over the course of the last 25 years, we've had 4 cities incorporate. They incorporated for lack of services. These are taxpayers in Miami Gardens, in Miami Lakes, in Palmetto Bay, in Doral that have created cities. They have taxed themselves more because they wanted more service. You know, we need to make sure that our county government first meets the obligations of what we created it. It's the fundamental thing that we need to do. And if we could do that first, then we could address other issues in a more efficient way. But yet we stretch our dollar. We throw money at issues instead of coming up with plans, collaboration to get these things done. You know, as your mayor, I want to make sure that we realign what the purpose of your county government was built to do. Make sure your garbage is picked up on time, that the pothole is fixed. That's what we do in local government. You know, we can't radicalize it, and then we fail. We fail in all ends.
All right. Commissioner Bovo, this next question is for you. Hopefully, this won't be hard to answer. This is a very difficult question. You two have worked together. You two have worked together for several years on the county commission. So if you could say something nice about your opponent tonight, what would it be?
Look, this campaign is not personal, and I want to make that clear. And I have a lot of respect for the work that she's done. We probably have I know we've crossed paths in the past before she was an elected official, and perhaps even before I was. You know, but the issue here is not about whether she's a good person or not. The issue here is about representing our taxpayers, making sure that we do not defund police, making sure that we're investing in proper programming. You know, the reason our park programs start to wane is because we don't invest in them. The same tax dollars that we pay, we don't invest in them. That's why this is so important. You know, so it's not on a personal level. You know, I know she means very well for her community. We just differ in the ways we should approach these things. You know, she has radical ideas for our community that I'm just not down with. You know, I don't want us to be another New York. And I love New York. I was born in New York. But I don't want to be another New York or Portland or Chicago or San Francisco or LA for that matter. I want us to make sure that we do what we've always done. Work with our community, a very diverse community, but has never been divided, because the people in Hialeah want the same thing that the people in Homestead want, or Palmetto Bay. And as your mayor, that's what I want to work toward. Let's get those things done right first, then we can work on other issues.
All right. Commissioner Cava.
Well, I'd like to start by saying that I believe, I know that this commissioner is a very good father and very dedicated to his children, and I'll add that I think he has a very good sense of humor. However, calling me a radical is not very funny. It is so very far from the truth. I mean, someone who has spent a career working hard in communities peacefully to bring about change that would benefit everyone and create a level playing field, bringing more people into the American dream. That is exactly what I've spent a lifetime doing. There's nothing radical about providing services. There's nothing radical about the county caring about its citizens and spending its money. Look, who else is going to take care of our seniors? Sure, there are some state programs, there are some private programs, but at the end of the day, we are responsible for the well-being of all of our residents. And that is exactly what I've done, nothing radical about it.
Well, we appreciate you being civil with one another. Thank you so much for that. And now it's time for the closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes each, and we begin with Commissioner Levine Cava.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much to both of you and to the viewers. It's been a great honor to be together for the last hour for a very important discussion about our future. And I want to especially say to our residents, thank you for doing your part, because we know that you have all reached out to your family, your friends, and your neighbors during these very difficult times. And to our small businesses, we know that you are affected by this pandemic, and I stand with you. I will work harder than ever to bring us forward and build back better than ever. I've been working for 40 years, lifting families, communities, businesses to have more opportunities. And as your mayor, I will continue exactly the same, but even more so. So today, I tell you, my promise is very simple. I will be honest, and I will be focused on solutions that will take us out of these difficult times. I ask you humbly for your support, for your vote, number 81. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Bovo.
Thank you, Jackie, Joanne, NBC6 for this opportunity. And to those that are watching at home, we are living through difficult times, no doubt about it. And perhaps some of the worst moments may be to come as we navigate through this pandemic. As your mayor, I'm going to work. I'm going to work with those families that want to get their kids back to school so they could go back to work. I'm going to work with those business owners. You know, the ones, the mom and pop operation where both mom and dad operate the business. I know it well because I grew up that way. I want to help you make sure that you could open safely, keeping your customers and your employees safe. I want to work so that we could get our tourism business back, knowing full well that there's a lesson learned in COVID-19 that we have to diversify. our economy in order to bring different and better paying jobs, not just tourist-based jobs. We're going to work through this. We're going to do it as we've always done, together. This election is important. Make no mistake about it. We're at a crossroad in Miami-Dade County. We could go the route of other municipalities across the nation that have been radicalized, New York, Chicago, Portland, where they burn Bibles and assault police officers, or we could stay the course in Miami-Dade County, understanding that our diversity is an asset and that we're not divided, because we all want the same thing: opportunity, prosperity in our community. As your mayor, I won't defund police, and we're not going to raise taxes. We're going to work with you with what you could afford. We're going to champion our heroes in our community that have been working so hard, especially those county employees that I salute for their hard work. I have number 80 in the ballot. I humbly ask you consider my candidacy, vote for me, and please go to stevebovo.com for more information about my campaign.
Commissioner Bovo, Commissioner Levine, Cava, thank you both for joining us for this spirited and heartfelt debate. We appreciate you. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope what you've heard tonight helps you make a decision when you head to vote. The next mayor will have to tackle all these critical issues facing Miami-Dade County.
And remember that Monday, October 5th is the last day you can register to vote in Florida for the upcoming November elections. And if you miss part of our debate, head to NBC6.com or the NBC6 app for highlights. Plus, we will post the entire hour-long debate on the NBC6 South Florida YouTube channel.
And if you want to see the debate held in Spanish by our colleagues at Telemundo 51, go to their YouTube page.
Thanks once again, Commissioner Levine, Cava, Commissioner Bovo. And thank you once again for joining us. Make sure you voice your choice and vote. Have a good night.